We are now officially live.
So, dear everyone, and welcome to our weekly online Dhamma group with Venerable Dhammo joining us from the Meditation Center in Sri Lanka and the online Sirimangalo community. Today we will continue our study of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta by the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw for 1 hour, and after that we will have time for discussions and questions. We will begin today's session by taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha and accept the 5 precepts together. We do this every week to prepare our minds for studying the Dhamma and remind ourselves of the basic principles of morality. It's still the same formula as it was during the Buddha's time, and by reciting it, one declares themselves a Buddhist. So is there someone in the Discord who would like to lead the recitation for us?
I would like to.
Okay, thank you, Sanda.
Ahang bante ti saranena saha pancha silani yachami. Dutiyampi ahang bante ti saranena saha pancha silani yachami. Tatiyampi ahang bante ti saranena saha pancha silani yachami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tisarnagamanang nititang.
Ama bante.
Parnatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinādāna viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinādāna veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kāmesu micchācārā viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kāmesu micchācārā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Musawada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Surameraya Majjapamadatthana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Sura Majjapamadatthana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Imani Pancha Sikkhapadani Silena Sugating Yanti Silena Bhoga Sampada Silena Nibbutting Yanti Tasma Silang Visodhanye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, thank you, Sandap and Bante. And we will continue with the study of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. And if you're not yet on the stage, and if you're part of the reading group, please send a request. And you just have to have at least completed the at-home course to be able to join us in the reading. And also before we start reading, we try to orient ourselves to read about 2 paragraphs. It can be more, it can be less, depending on how much it is. And please take your time when reading and try to read slowly and carefully. And also between each paragraph, please leave a short pause so we can maybe ask a question or the Venerable can explain something in more detail. And don't hesitate if you have any questions. So this is a session for discussion and question and study. So we are all here to learn and always possible. And we start with the paragraph on page 145 in the PDF that starts with a Pali phrase. And I saw you already, Mila. Yes, you can start, I think. No, I think Martin is the next person. Actually, I'm not sure. So anyone can just start.
I can start.
Okay.
Yasa etadisang yanang itiya purisasa va save etena yanena nibbana seva santiketi. Any woman or man possessing this eightfold path vehicle can get to the presence of Nibbana by means of it. In accordance with this last verse, the owner of the Eightfold Path vehicle, irrespective of sex, is definitely bound to reach Nibbana. So it is very clear that anyone wishing to reach Nibbana must develop the Noble Path based on the path of insight.
Bante, what does it mean, the owner of the Eightfold Path vehicle?
So I think the grammar is of whom there is a vehicle of this sort. Yasa of whom, yanang, a vehicle, and then the missing verb is hoti. That in Thai studies you'd have to actually supply it. So for formal studies, you say yasa of whom yanang there is a vehicle Oti exists, etadisang of this sort, or no, it would actually be a vehicle, yanang a vehicle, etadisang of this sort, oti exists. So, but then maybe you weren't asking the grammar. If you're asking, what does it mean? Remember, we're talking about the Eightfold Noble Path, right? So, and he's described it as a vehicle. So, if you have the Eightfold Noble Path factors in your mind, that's what it means to have a vehicle of that sort.
So you already have it developed.
Well, you don't have to be black and white. I mean, someone who has it partially developed is on the way as well. It's not like a math statement. It's just he's just saying that this is what leads to nibbana, and the more you have, the closer you are to nibbana. Of course, when you have them fully developed, that's the moment where there is cessation, the moment that leads to cessation.
Okay, thank you.
It actually does say, if anyone's wondering, it does say man or woman, which is not the rule. The Buddha doesn't always make it clear that both men and women. Sometimes he just uses man or masculine words, but it depends on the audience. In this case, he wasn't talking to monks. Like if he's talking to monks, it's often very masculine, the words that he uses, because he doesn't have to tell them about how women practice, for example. And often, just in speech, it was just the way of things that often it's just expedient. People just said nara, which is a masculine word. And sometimes he would say purisa, that sort of thing. But here he's talking to a deva and probably other devas, other women as well. That's right. There are the female devas who followed this ex-monk deva. But I bring it up also because it is remarkable at the time to say this, that women are able to achieve Nibbana. Obviously, it seems like it would be a shock if he were to deny that women could, but at the time, it was a shock to hear that women could become enlightened. Or maybe not a shock, that's not fair, but there were religious groups at the time who had very strict, very definite, explicit doctrines that said women cannot become enlightened, cannot reach the highest. Giants were in particular, because women couldn't go naked the way men could go naked. I think that was a part of it. In their religion, men went naked, and that was considered the highest, or the path to the highest. But another thing it points to, it's reading a little bit into it, but it also points to and reminds us that Buddhism isn't a thing that, it isn't a thing for people. Like, it's not about becoming a monk. It's not about being someone or being this or that. It's not really a religion in the sense of having structures and institutions and so on, and pitting itself against other religions. Buddhism is a teaching. It's claims that are made about reality that can be tested and verified. And so it's the kind of thing that, of course, is open to anyone. It's not a boys' club. It's not a monks' club. It's a very scientific and very real, very practical, very valuable path and teaching. It would be ridiculous for us in modern times to think that it was only for men or something like that. People would be rightly turned off of Buddhism if they heard that, and surprised. And they should be. If you're surprised, then you understand it. People who are not surprised people who fall into the dogma of the culture, because many cultures, Buddhist cultures, have become somewhat misogynistic and male-oriented, male-focused. Which is what I'm saying, is that when something becomes a religion, it can become that. It gains a sort of a structure to it, where there are qualifications that you need, and there's this implicit qualification for some of Buddhist culture, Buddhist establishment, that you need to be a male, you need to be a man. This is more for men, and so on. Even in the Buddha's time, the Buddha did make clear that ordination was more of a man's thing. So it's not perfectly egalitarian in that way, but monastic life is something actually quite different, and it's an example of something that is not Buddhism. Monastic life is not Buddhism in the sense of it's not the teaching, it's not the path that leads to enlightenment. It's just a structure that the Buddha created that is limited to only certain individuals. If you have certain sicknesses, you can't become a monk. In the beginning, a woman couldn't become a monk, that sort of thing. But none of that had anything to do with the Dhamma, the truth, Buddhism. But it's a good example of the difference. When you look at Buddhism as a structure and Buddhism as a teaching. And it's, of course, the teaching that we focus on. We don't really focus on ordination in our tradition. We encourage it for those who've practiced well. But we encourage it, of course, for men and women. So nothing there.
Bhante, isn't it in a way, or in general, isn't it very remarkable how the Buddha was able to go so much against the grain, for example, with the topic of ordination of women and also other things, and he was still so successful in his environment?
He didn't really go so much against it there. He was not in favor of women ordaining. So that is a point of contention that people often have concern. People approaching Buddhism have that the Buddha wasn't completely keen on women ordaining. I mean, it's not that I would fault him or the Buddhists fault him, but people outside of Buddhism are not sure about that. Not quite happy about the fact that the Buddha was pretty negative about the idea of women ordaining. I mean, I could talk about the reasons why that is and why it does actually make some sense. But yes, as far as talking about the Dhamma and becoming enlightened, he did go against the grain, but he went against the grain in a lot of ways. But I mean, the way he said it is, I don't fight with people. I don't fight with the world fights with me. The Buddha didn't go against any grain. He just made glaringly obvious how others were going against the grain. Buddha of course, just taught the truth.
A really nice point, Bhante. Thank you. Mila, you can continue if you like. I'm not sure if you're speaking, but you're not audible for me.
I don't hear her either.
Okay, then we can continue with Sanda and maybe start. You can continue afterwards when it works.
It is common knowledge that in this mundane world, the owner of some form of transport is able to reach the required destination by using it. However, just knowing about the mechanics of a vehicle without actually possessing it will not get anyone anywhere. Likewise, by just knowing how to enumerate the various types of mental and physical phenomena, or the 8 path factors, no one can reach Nibbana. It must be firmly remembered that only by getting the path vehicle through contemplation of the actual arising and dissolution of mind and matter, and riding on the carriage of the Noble Eightfold Path, one can reach Nibbana. The 3 verses explained above are summarized as follows. The straight path is the noble path. The destination is Nibbana, which is free from danger. Fitted with 2 wheels of physical and mental exertion, the carriage is silent.
I think they belong to one paragraph, Sanda. You can finish.
2. Shame and dread of wrongdoing serve as the leaning board, while mindfulness forms the awnings of the carriage. Path knowledge, preceded by insight knowledge, is the driver of the carriage. 3. The owners of such a carriage, whether man or woman, may ride comfortably in it to reach Nibbana.
One small point, for those who aren't very clear on the terminology, where it says path knowledge preceded by insight knowledge. So the path that we follow is called the Pubbanga Magga. Pubbanga means preliminary, but it's called that because it's not technically the thing that leads to Nibbana. Technically, the only thing that can lead to Nibbana has to be the moment before the realization of Nibbana. So that moment is called in fact, it's not even that. It's okay. I think we've talked about this already, but the path moment is the first moment of cessation, taking Nibbana as an object. Why it's called the path is, not because it's what leads to Nibbana, it's what leads to the cessation of defilement, the cessation of suffering. It's the moment that quenches the defilements. So it's called the path. Before that, but why I'm bringing that up is that is not anything to do with practice. That's more like the result of practice. But it's called the path because it's that which leads to the result. To being an enlightened individual is really the point. After that moment, or that moment is what it creates the state of being enlightened. So it's called the path. It's called the noble path. Preceding that is all this work that we do to get to the point where we can see clearly and have this experience of letting go, where we see impermanence, see suffering, see non-self, and that's called the Pubbanga Magga. It's also called you could call it the Vipassana Magga, but Vipassana has often been translated as insight, and that's the word he's using here. But insight is not a great translation. Vipassana is a pretty simple word, but insight is not a great translation. Vi means clearly, so Vipassana means seeing clearly. Anyway, whenever you see this word insight in a Buddhist context, it's usually a translation of the word Vipassana. So preceded by insight knowledge means all this work we do, going through what have been enumerated as a series of knowledges, but it's basically a process of seeing things arising and ceasing, realizing that the corollary to that is that they're not worth clinging to start getting tired of it, turning away from it, wanting to be free from it, and working hard to see it so clearly enough to let go. That's the process of vipassana, of seeing clearly. And so that's what's being said here. If you're wondering what this path knowledge was said by insight knowledge, it's referring to the practice that we do, which precedes that moment where there is cessation and the attainment of enlightenment.
Bhante, would it with 2 wheels of physical and mental exertion, the carriage is silent, mean like with the effort to exert mindfulness, the mind is silent because there's no defilement? Is that reading too much?
He did talk about the word silent last week. It's an interesting word. I got the sense that he's just saying that he's because he's being asked what is the path, and he's saying you're already on the best vehicle. You already had the best vehicle. So best is the idea that he's emphasizing that by calling it akujjana, which is translated as not squeaking. Not quite sure the way they'd use akujjana, whether it means something like not a rickety cart. It's just a way of, I think, calling it a great one. But is there something deeper? I'm trying to find where it...
Bhante, you explained last
Isn't-
time. Okay, edit, you can go ahead.
I was just thinking maybe so being mindful of the physical and the mental is like in balance, perhaps, and not negligent about one or the other. Maybe is that why it might be in balance and it's silent?
No, I think the explanation in the text and from you, Bhante, was that no matter how much weight it's carrying, it doesn't suffer from that. It can bear anything because it's such a strong vehicle. That's why it doesn't make any noise, because it cannot be burdened.
The silent carriage is a reference to horse-drawn carriages. When burdened with many passengers, they are liable to produce a creaking sound. It's an unlimited, but the path vehicle doesn't have that problem. Sometimes Buddha said that it is possible to make a silent escape without letting the celestial nymphs know by means of this transport. So the idea there is that there's some kind of unimpeded that would appeal to this deva. The other thing you have to remember is, as I said last week, he's talking to a deva, and so the language they use is a little bit different and a little bit more flowery and poetic than you'd hear talking to humans. We have, he doesn't post he doesn't give the Pali of the question, but I did look it up last week. But in general, yeah, the Pali is, the words they use are somewhat poetic. So it is poetry, and he's getting at something with the word silent. That's obviously a metaphor, so it's not probably literally about it being without noise. And Mahasi Sayadaw gives a couple of options. But I like the idea that it's a way of making a silent escape without alerting Mara or alerting people who would hold you back. But it also might be that it's efficient. It's not exactly silent, it's akujana, which means not something. And kujana means chirping like a bird, I think. Yeah, kujana is the chirping of birds. I don't have a good translation of kujana.
Thank you, Bante.
Actually, I think it is very fairy like, and it also the fantasy. Funny in a Buddhist context, in the inexactness of the légèreté, the lightness of the poetry. It's sort of like some Chinese poetry. The art is like, if you describe it too exactly, then it's mundane. But if you don't describe it enough, it's lying. So yeah, it's pretty.
A PED says akujana. Akujana means rickety. So it has nothing to do with noise. But if Mahasi Sayadaw says noise, we have to believe that he's getting it from somewhere better than the PED. Rato kujano atankiko magowa adipeto is meant, yes. Yatahi pakati rato akewa and Ujjati, Viravati. Viravati, yeah. Virati means it creaks. Ujjati doesn't mean it creaks. Kujjati, oh, maybe it chirps, yeah.
Bante, I went to, I don't know if that's useful to the Sanskrit, and it says cooing, murmuring, warbling, rumbling.
Yeah.
For kuja.
We have also kujana as meaning bent, crooked. Yeah, it must be chirping. Ujjati viravati. Na ewang aryamagos tohi eka paharinacha. Yeah, he's actually translating the commentary. So what Mahasi Sayadaw says is a translation of the commentary. He's just translated this. He doesn't mention about the nymphs and escaping them, though. But the part so that's where he got this, where he says, some carriages are noiseless, but when burdened by many passengers, they become liable. So this is the commentary's explanation. That the Aryamaga is so great that so many people can get in it, but you couldn't do that with an ordinary cart. It would creak. It would make noise. It's an interesting interpretation. My guess is that you can just interpret it as describing it as a great carriage. And akujana was probably a word people use to describe new and well-built carriages, right? The word that you would say if you're praising the carriage. I wouldn't read too much into it.
I think it's my turn, but Mila, do you want to take your turn?
Yes. After teaching the 3 verses, the Buddha also gave a discourse on the 4 noble truths, which I will discuss. Sorry, can you hear me? Yes, I think yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Which I will discuss again when we come to the section on the truths of the path, Magga Satcha. While listening to the discourse, Samanadeva reflected on the meditation practices of his former existence. Although he had not been able to attain higher knowledge as a bhikkhu in spite of his strenuous efforts, in the existence of a deva whose physical body was free from impurities, he was quickly able to develop the successive stages of insight until he attained the path and fruition of stream winning and realized Nibbana, thus becoming a stream winner.
Well, that's encouraging compared to my question last time, that the quality of a deva can be even helping you in practicing vipassana.
Yeah, it's a good example of this discussion we've been having about whether it's good to be born as a deva or not. Pretty clear that the consensus is that there are real benefits, very real benefits to being born as a deva. But the qualifier is as a Buddhist practitioner who is reborn as a deva is in a good position to cultivate the Dhamma. Someone who hasn't practiced the Dhamma who becomes a deva might just squander it. Is more likely to just squander it.
Was this monk not already very accomplished as a human?
He was apparently pretty accomplished, yes. But for all his accomplishment, the time he spent as a human, he was not able to become enlightened. And he practiced ardently. So ardently that he didn't eat enough, and that's why he died while he was doing walking meditation. But as a deva, all he had to do is listen to the Buddha's teaching, and it seems that by contemplating during the talk that the Buddha gave, he was able to become enlightened. A sotapanna. So there is a potential implication that his state of being a deva made it easier. That's kind of borne out by the text, which describe again and again how quickly and easily devas became enlightened. And in great numbers.
Thank you, Bhante. Mila, is it my turn?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. The main point of the story of Samana Deva is that although the bhikkhu had been engaged ardently in the insight meditation, because the noble path, which could cut off craving, had not yet been attained. This craving, otherwise called the truth of the origin of suffering, Samudaya Satcha, had caused rebirth in a new existence as a celestial being. The story also shows how the noble path could be developed and how, as a deva, higher knowledge could be attained with ease. Another point brought out in the story is that if attachment lingers in an individual or on an object, craving for existence is likely to cause rebirth in the vicinity of such a person or object. How attachment to an object will lead to renewed existence in close proximity to it is borne out by the well-known story of the bhikkhu Tissa, who died with great craving for his robes and consequently was reborn in the form of a louse in those very robes.
I don't think he's going to tell the story of Tissa. There's not much of a story to it. It's just, yes, he was attached to his robes, and yes, he was just reborn as a louse. The only addition that I think is mentioned in the text is that the monks were going to divide up the robes, and this lice, the singular of lice is louse, was upset and disturbed, and so the Buddha said, wait 7 days, don't share those, don't distribute those robes yet, just leave them be for a week. And then the louse died after a week and was born, I think, in heaven, or I'm not sure, born somewhere good. But if they had distributed the robes, the louse would have been disturbed and been reborn in a bad place.
That sounds horrible. I mean, on that theory, why wouldn't the Buddhists all die alone in a kuti? Like, wouldn't that be a Buddhist ritual then? That they should be kept away from everything they could be attached to?
Do you think that works?
No,
If you're away
I
from
mean,
what you're attached to, you're not going to be attached to something when you die?
not at all. I'm not suggesting at all. But here it's saying just close proximity would invoke craving. So it's just to avoid dangers. Not that that's the main vehicle.
Oh, not physical proximity. I mean, probably the Burmese doesn't say close proximity. It just means. Oh no! In close proximity to it, you're misreading it, I think. Attachment to the object means being reborn in close proximity to it. You'll see in the next story. The next story is really a good story. Really quite what's the word? Not uplifting, but it's quite disturbing. Is not the right word, but it is disturbing.
Great. Thank you, Bente.
Now I will deal with the account of how attachment to one's wife caused rebirths as a snake, a dog, and a cow. Attachment leading to animal rebirths. In a Sri Lankan village lived a man who was misbehaving with the wife of his elder brother. The woman was more passionately attached to her lover than to her husband. She therefore instigated her lover to get rid of his elder brother. The man remonstrated, "Woman, don't ever talk like that." However, after she had repeated her evil suggestions 3 times, he asked, "How would I go about it?" She replied, Go with an axe and wait for him at the riverside near the big caper tree. I'll send him there." Thereupon the man proceeded there and lay in wait for his elder brother, hiding among the branches of the tree.
Husband came back from his work in the forest. The wife made a show of loving affection for him, and fondly brushing his hair, said, "Your hair needs cleaning, it is too dirty. Why not go and shampoo it at the riverside near the big caper tree?" Happy with the thought, my wife is very affectionate for me. He accordingly went to the bathing place at the riverside. He was preparing to wash his hair, bending his head down, when his young brother came out from his hiding place and cruelly chopped his head off with the axe. Because of the clinging attachment to his wife, he was reborn as a green snake, a rat snake, according to some of these scholars. Still attached to his wife, the snake took to dropping himself down from the roof of the house upon the woman. Realizing that the snake must have been her former husband, she caused it to be killed and removed. Even after passing away from the snake's existence, his attachment for his former wife still remained strong, and he was reborn as a dog in his old house. As a dog, he was still clinging to his former wife, following her everywhere, even when she went out to the forest. People made derisive remarks. "The hunter woman with the dog is going out. I wonder where she is headed." The woman then asked her lover to kill the dog. His attachment still intense and persisting, the dog was reborn as a calf in the same house. The young calf also followed her everywhere, drawing laughter and ridicule from the people again. "Look, the cowherd has come out. I wonder which pasture her cattle are going to graze in." Again, the woman asked her lover to kill the young calf. Again, his tenacious attachment to his wife caused rebirth, this time in her womb.
Sometimes we're not born to our parents out of love.
In the human world that he had regained, he was endowed with the faculty of recalling previous existences. Exercising this faculty, he recollected the previous 4 existences and was greatly distressed when he came to know that they were all terminated at the instance of his former wife. What an irony to have taken rebirth in the womb of such an enemy, he lamented.
Now, mostly, obviously, birth is associated with love and caring, the most common, but not always the case. It's valuable to be exposed to this because we romanticize so many things about life, including obviously pregnancy and childbirth. it's magical. It's it's from God for those people who are religious. But even people who don't believe in God have been indoctrinated into this idea of it having some kind of magical significance, some very important, meaningful nature, and it having significance, and that we should have a certain view about pregnancy and birth, and of course, it should all be seen as positive. Most cultures have these kind of narratives that they'll tell about birth and pregnancy, and of course, mostly it's borne out in reality, because love and affection are obviously very big reasons why one would be reborn in someone else's womb. But it's not the only reason, and it's always more complicated than that. And it leads to such anguish for parents and for families when it doesn't go according to the narrative, when children misbehave, are not affectionate towards their parents, and when parents are not affectionate towards their children. There are cases where mothers are just completely disinterested in their children. They don't have that affection. I mean, the narrative often is self-fulfilling, because we see our children when they're born, and we reinforce the narrative by believing it, and we cultivate a stronger and stronger attachment. But it has to be based on some seed. And if it wasn't there in the first place, like this child, it's not a very common thing for a child to be completely antagonistic towards their mother.
Bhante, you said it was not out of love, but isn't it both just because of attachment, even though, I mean, I don't really understand why you did say that.
Well, it's certainly not out of her love. She had no love for this being.
Mm-hmm. But I do find it interesting, or how big the difference is between as soon as he got reborn as a human, he regained his senses again, and stopped with whatever was leading him before as an animal, which I think points to the delusion of animals.
Well, being murdered, I mean, it's all just conjecture, but being murdered so many times in a row could have that effect, potentially. I don't know. It is just a story, and the details are told by people, and are they all accurate? It's not clear. It apparently happened that this young boy related this to his grandfather. I mean, we don't regain. The truth is that we all have that. We lose it for whatever reason in the womb. We lose our memories. They become too associated due to the newness and the difference in physical concomitants, and the physical reality that we find ourselves in is unconnected to that past life. So they kind of just get lost for most people. But young kids who do remember eventually forget, eventually lose it. It's just not connected with their new brain.
Also, it's amazing how once he does see his past lives, I mean, it's still like for him a continuous, even though he was born like from the animal realm to the human, it's so different, but he's seeing it as a continuous self of, like my enemy sort of thing. It's still the same, continuing for him sort of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is surprising to think that he did remember 4 lives. It may be that that's not actually what happened. I'm sorry to be so skeptical, but it can be helpful to not be so sure that everything that's said in the text is completely accurate. I mean, it could have been exaggerated. It would be enough for him to remember his past life and remember that this woman had him killed, and from there to put the pieces together, because she obviously had 4 different beings killed. That would have been someone would have been able to put the pieces together. It also may be, these things get twisted around, because after he became a monk, in the next paragraph, we haven't gotten there yet. Or did we get there? I don't know if we're there yet. Anyway, when they become a monk, they both become arahants. And at that point, it's much more likely that he's going to remember all his past lives. So it may be mixed up. And that, in fact, the reality was he was able to relate it more fully when he became an arahant. Or even just when he started practicing meditation.
I'll continue with the next paragraph. He would not let his mother touch him. Whenever the mother tried to hold him, the baby cried vociferously. So the grandfather had to take over the task of bringing up the child. When the child reached the age where he could speak, the grandfather asked him, "My dear child, why do you cry whenever your mother tries to hold you?"
He replied, "This woman is no mother to me. She's my enemy who killed me for 4 successive existences." So saying, he recounted to his grandfather the story of his previous lives. On hearing this sad tale, the old man wept, embracing the child, and said, "Come, my poor grandchild, let us get away. I see no gain in staying here." They went away and stayed in a monastery, where both of them received ordination, and in time, through the practice of meditation, were able to attain the path and fruition of arahantship. The moral to be drawn from this episode is that attachment gives rise to repeated new existence at the very location of that attachment. This story clearly bears out the truth of the teaching that attachment brings about fresh existences, puno bhavika. However, after meeting a violent death in successive existences as a snake, a dog, and a calf, in his final life as a human being, he attained arahantship, and so craving was completely extinguished. There would be no mere rebirth for him, and he would be free from all forms of suffering.
No more rebirth. So yeah, this is just capping it all off, reminding us where we are. We're on the second noble truth. This is the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the bulk of which is dealing with the 4 noble truths. We're on the second noble truth, the truth of the origin of suffering. And it reminds us how craving being the origin of suffering, or thirst, tanha, that one quality of tanha is that it is pono bhavika, which means it leads to rebirth, leads to being born again.
So we can stop here then. And thank you everyone for reading. If there are questions and thoughts about the reading of today, feel free to express it now.
So this might explain why there's so much child abuse, maybe.
Yeah, maybe not. Not really, I would say. I would say it's more complicated than that. I mean, certainly there's the aspect of you beat me in my past life, I beat you in this life, back and forth kind of thing. But things are more complicated than that. We don't hurt people just because they hurt us in the past. We hurt them sometimes because of circumstances. Like if they get in the way of us getting what we want. It's just complicated. There are connections for sure, but we also make new connections. Like in the case of this woman, she didn't kill her husband because he killed her in a past life. I mean, maybe, but it doesn't appear so. She didn't hate him. Her greed made her into an evil person. Her lust, her desire. A lot of child abuse is probably just that. People have craving, and they're not able to get the objects of their craving, and so they take it out on those who get in the way. Children get in the way of happiness. I mean, pleasure anyway. And of course, there's sexual abuse, which reasons for that, of course. One of which is actually a desire for power. People like having power over others, which very well may have roots in past lives, power dynamics back and forth. It's just samsara.
What I find really shocking, but also not really surprising, but just shocking, is how they would do such an evil thing, the brother, just because of the attachment to a sensual object that's really so... I mean, nothing is worth killing anyone, but I don't know, it's like two things defiling the mind at once and doing this thing out of the other. So it's really just disturbing how you can do that.
Yeah.
But then I'm happy that I'm not in that situation or thinking about such a thing and being repulsed by it. I guess that's a good thing.
So much of it is being immersed in wrong view and in a culture of wrong view that has wrong ideas about murder, wrong ideas about desire, namely that if you want something, then the goal is to find out how to get it. If you want to be with someone who is not your husband, you find a way to make it happen. And killing is, for non-Buddhists, it's not a big deal. Well, for many non-Buddhists.
Kiki, are you trying to say something? Because we don't hear you.
There's a group of young boys apparently in my mother's neighborhood who are terrorizing women who go for walks in the local park. And they're trying to figure out what to do about these children who are just young boys. But they gang up. They're starting to gang up. It's a trend, something that they learned through the internet, I guess. The internet, I mean, it's obviously not a bad thing. It's just a powerful thing. And power is not bad. Power is not a bad thing either. When you give power to people who don't have any direction, well, it's like rolling dice. These kids are probably not evil not exceptionally evil by nature. They don't have to be anyway. But without any instruction, even potentially good people can turn bad. Very good people won't. Very good people are there are people who are the sorts that are horrified by the idea of killing, horrified by the idea of hurting someone else, just by nature when they're born. It's rare, but there are people like that. Of course, has much to do with past lives and their qualities that they've developed in past lives. But for the average person who could go either way, and who has a lot of evil potential in them, but a lot of good potential in them, it's not the evil potential itself that is the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the wrong view. They don't have any inkling that killing is wrong. You know, you can have arguments like if you kill, you'll go to jail, or if you kill someone, their friends might hate you for it, and other people might hate you for it. But none of that is the real reason for not killing. The real reason is how horribly it destroys your mind. How it completely destroys you mentally. It sets you on a path that's very difficult to ever come back from. And nobody's ever had that explained to them or had it impressed upon them in any way. I have these young boys acting out. So, I mean, I haven't given details, but I was told details about their behavior, and it's just, I mean, it's pretty unsurprising, but it's just all, they're actively being the worst that they can be, not because they're evil, but because of how it triggers people. You know, you say things that are the absolute worst thing you could possibly say. They're trying to find what is the worst thing I can possibly say to these women, and what can I do to just be the worst to them? Not out of evil, but more out of the fun of it, the entertainment of it, and the high of it, you know, what it gives to you. So it's not surprising that these young kids are acting out in this way. But the real lesson is how no one is being taught that you actually can't get away with this. And they are getting away with it. They find ways to, because as soon as there's potential consequences, they act nice again. really interesting to hear about this. They will act nice as soon as there are potential consequences. As soon as they're threatened, they pretend that they did nothing wrong, that nothing happened. They call the people liars when they call them out on what they did and that sort of thing.
The thing is, and that's exactly what you're saying, Bante, if the consequences are not pointed out, like these kids, what you just said, we don't notice, or in my case as a kid, I didn't know, even if something caused stress, and there was this stress and I knew it was not good, this whatever it was, like even physical or mental, that even though it felt wrong, there was something wrong, I didn't really pay attention, and I didn't really think that should be avoided, or it will lead somewhere. Like, it's a consequence. If you do something bad, you will even notice it in your mind. Even if you don't practice Buddhism, practice meditation, the 5 precepts, there is, I think, in every being that sense of wrongness, of stress when you kill or anything else, but you just don't realize that it's not a good thing, that it's not good. So I think that's really important. But exactly what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the core of Buddhism. Core of Buddhism is not telling you what is good or bad. It's telling you that you can see for yourself what is good and bad. That the only reason we don't perceive bad things as bad, in other words, as things that we don't want to do, only reason that we don't perceive this as, oh, I shouldn't do that. Oh, this is not something I want to do. Oh, why would I do that? Basically, why we don't have hiri and ottappa is only because we don't see clearly. That's the real, true reason. It's not you're a bad person or you have defilements or this sort of thing. Even the defilements, they can only arise through delusion. They can only arise through lack of clarity. At the moment when you see clearly, you can't give rise to greed or anger. You can't. You see bad as bad and good as good. It's very much it's the past couple of Dhammapada verses that we've gone through in the next one as well. The next one is specifically about this. Now, it's not so much what we do as how we perceive things.
And kids need the Buddha's teaching more than anyone else, I would argue. So may they find the help they need.
Next Dhammapada verse, so coincidentally, is about kids as well. Kids whose parents put them on the wrong path. It's easy to blame the parents in the case of these kids that I mentioned, and I mean, I think it's correct to blame the parents, but it's what you hear. People don't blame the kids so much as they blame the parents, but it's not just the parents. It's society and it's samsara, really. Ultimately, you don't just get mad at kids, but you also don't get mad at the parents. Just remember that this is a part of samsara, and what you focus on is your own work, doing what is right, not concerned with consequences or results or fixing samsara or something like that. But you don't have to worry about these things because, or if you are doing the right thing, if you are seeing clearly and your actions are correct and your actions are right and in line with good, it's not going to fix samsara, but it's going to be good because it's good. Good begets good. If these kids wisened up, they could help their parents. If the parents had clear vision, they could probably help their kids. Teachers can help their students. Anyone can help anyone. Friends. All it would take is one of those kids to be a good friend and wake the others up.
Bante, in the case of our story, I still can't really understand, like, why would a person, only because of they are attached to their wife, or basically they love this person, to be killed several times in several existences? Like, how is that the consequence for attachment?
You have to remember, you don't sit there and say, "Oh, her, I want to be born in her womb." It's not that. It's more of a story that happens to you. Visions and the reactions. Remember, this is not a person who's mindful or meditating or in any way on the path. They're just reacting to everything. Imagine if someone betrayed you horribly, someone who you love. That love wouldn't necessarily just disappear. Every time you thought of that person, the first thing that would come would be attachment. And then there would be the anguish of knowing that they betrayed you, for example. So regardless of whether he had a sense that this woman was betraying him, his death process would still very much involve the strong emotions of attachment. There would be images of her and that sort of thing.
So for them, for the possibility to arise for them to be killed is random, or still a consequence?
Well, the killing is a consequence of her evil. He keeps killing him because she's evil. Is it because he killed her in a past life? I mean, it's probably complicated in that sort of way. There's a lot of cause and effect. It's very much intertwined and complicated. But, what is the relationship with the brother? The brother is the one who killed him in the first place, right? And she never killed him once, I don't think. She had him killed. But the brother was involved. So is there some complicated past life karma with him? It's just probably a mess. But it doesn't have to have been completely instigated by past lives. This woman has evil arising, and the man. Sorry, don't just put it on the woman. The brother. I mean, to be honest, it's worse for the brother. This is your brother you're killing. That seems more horrific somehow. Her husband. I mean, killing your husband is pretty bad, but killing your brother seems somehow worse.
Thank you.
Not to mention that he actually did the killing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you tell someone to kill, you don't share the karma of killing. You take the karma of telling someone to kill. And there's a distinction there. It's not, of course, you're not absolved from anything. And as a monk, you'd still be no longer a monk if you did that. But it is a different karma. And it's probably, generally speaking, worse to be the one who actually does the killing. But we don't usually, it's hard to judge where it's different, is the point. And the consequences are probably very different, probably somewhat different.
And Bhante, the difference between the consequences, is it because the impact that each action has on the mind? I mean, it is the impact, it's greater to actually do the deed instead of saying.
It's different. Remember, the consequences often have to do with how the deed is remembered. So remembering that you said to do this is different from remembering that you actually did it. I mean, it's so terribly complicated what the results, what the consequences are going to be. It's hard to quantify it. And it's not just a number where you can say this one is a 5 and this one is a 10. They're just different acts.
Is it because the effort involved in doing so is different as well?
I mean, it's just a very different act, right? You say something and you do something. The other thing is 2 people can do the same act and have different consequences because it depends on their state of mind.
Curious. Now, if we talk about the state of mind, let's say the 3 defilements, the greed, the anger, delusion, but as Bhante, you have suggested, it's perhaps, let's say it's delusion that caused the desire to kill. And we are concerned about the state of mind. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the origin is still craving. So, it in theory, it's not categorically different from the monk who was attached to his robes. It's, at the end of the day, is still craving. Is it not? And
Well, there are different types of craving, different types of tanha. But yes, basically, I mean, in the end, it's just complicated. There's many moving parts.
Thank you, Bhante.
I mean, that's regarding also the current short that was uploaded today, that with everything being so complicated, the best thing is to make things simple, to have a simple teaching like the Buddha's teaching, to have precepts that are very straightforward and simple, and just discard the rest. And especially with our minds, our brains, trying to proliferate at every chance we have.
Also, from the same shot, I thought what came across was also that it's incredibly difficult to keep it simple.
Well, except that reality is very simple, and so it's not about making it simple, it's about seeing it clearly. So you don't have to, you shouldn't be discouraged thinking, oh, how do I make simplicity? You just have to look, and the simplicity comes by itself. As you look, you only see a very select group of things. You don't see me or mine. You don't see worth clinging to. You just see impermanent suffering and non-self. You see that everything is just arising and ceasing. The problem is, of course, it's difficult to do that. And it's difficult to do that when your defilements are telling you to do something else.
Bhante, if it's okay now, I will present you with our first question on the spreadsheet. And the question is, I have a recurring question that keeps arising. When I note, thinking, eating, walking, I feel the noting itself creates a subtle noticer, separate from what is noticed. Is this a common pitfall? My working analogy is that mindfulness is like a mirror. The label simply reflects, not a separate self-observing. Is this correct? And should I simply note this sense of separation when it arises?
You should certainly just note the sense of separation. You're on the right track there. It's just a feeling or an awareness. If it's an awareness, you can just note knowing. If it's a feeling, they're pretty similar. Point is that it doesn't mean anything. It's still just a feeling, a perception. And it comes and it goes.
Here's the next question, Bhante. What effect does meditating have in the process between one life to another? Like, if the protagonists of those stories we read did any meditation, what would or could have been different?
I think you'd see a more pronounced difference for those doing the evil deeds. This guy doesn't sound to have been that evil at all. And so it wouldn't have been a profound difference necessarily. He was already in a good way. It could still very well have been. Suppose he started meditating, his wife still very much might have killed him. If he had become a monk, maybe not. You can have my brother, I'll go become a monk. But you see more pronounced in those people, as I was talking about before, people who are evil just because they don't know any better. Not just because, but who's not knowing any better is instigating the evil. For those people, they would wake up and realize that they were headed on the wrong path. So there'd be less killing, less cheating. Certainly, if he had done meditation, it's possible that he would never have been reborn. He wouldn't have been reborn as a snake and a dog and a calf. There is that. He may have just gone straight to her womb, or to heaven, or somewhere else.
Bhante, here is the next question. I am neglecting my bad siblings and father because they take advantage of my soft nature. I feel unnecessarily burdened by their drama. Will this lead to bad karma in my mind and next birth?
Well, by feeling burdened itself isn't a problem, and it isn't wrong. But what you have to be able to see is that there's usually a next step. When you perceive it as that, not necessarily wrong, and that I think could still be very innocent and correct of a thing to say. Yes, I am burdened by them. Okay, that can be accurate. It can be unnecessary, certainly. They don't need to burden me. That you can be aware of all of this, and this is valuable to point out, because usually we say that makes me very angry or upset, or makes me avoid them, afraid of going near them, etc., etc. But it doesn't. It is completely innocent to say all these, to relate all these terrible facts. My wife killed me. It's okay to think that. There was this man who got killed by his wife. It's actually not a cause for stress or suffering. The problem is we can't help but be triggered by these things, and that's where mindfulness makes the change. So you can acknowledge all of this, and it would be wrong of us to say, oh no, don't. What the most common advice would be, oh no, don't think of it that way, think of it a different way. You don't have to think of it as any way. You don't have to make an effort to think of it, create some new narrative about, some new story about it. All you have to do is be mindful. You'll see clearly, and if it's true that you're being taken advantage of, you'll see that. But it won't bother you. It won't make you upset or angry or frustrated or afraid, stressed. It won't make you just be like a doormat to be walked all over. There's no good in that, right? What good is that for anyone? To let people walk all over you. It's not good for them. It's not good for you. What benefit is there in that? There isn't one. It's not the right thing is the point. Because that's the point, is with mindfulness, you'll see right from wrong. You'll know it. Certain things are inherently right and wrong. Certain other things are neither right nor wrong and have no consequence. What you think has no consequence. Thoughts are just experiences. It's like what you see. You see something, that doesn't mean you're a bad person, right? Well, if you think something, it also never means that you're a good or a bad person. It's just a thought. How you react to what you see, react to what you think. That's where the problem arises.
Here's the next question, Bhante. What might be a causal relationship between too much virya, and delusion in the context of practice? Or is there any relationship between these two?
You can't really have too much virya, not literally. The problem is if you don't have enough samadhi, because virya and samadhi have to go hand in hand. That's just because you don't have strong enough samadhi, not because you have too much virya. Virya would never be a problem. It's a mental faculty. But without concentration, it's a problem. It's not because there's too much of it, it's because it's not focused, right? It's not directed properly. So with delusion, you can't see clearly, and not seeing clearly, you react and are distracted by things, and so you're not focused. And you can also, of course, apply yourself out of greed or anger. Maybe you hate your experiences, so you apply effort to try and get rid of them. There's wrong effort. But it's not that the effort itself is wrong, it's that it's applied wrongly. Right? Applied improperly.
Bhante, this next question is related to the text. Doesn't a command also count as a killing? Or her just telling him to kill his brother does not count as a command in this sense?
But it counts for breaking the first precept. We consider that to be a breach of the first precept. But the Buddha was quite explicit. You don't share in the karma of killing. You share. You receive the results of the karma of telling someone to kill. And they're two different acts. Which, I mean, they're not even categorical. It's not like this is in this category, and it's obviously a different set of mind states. If you looked at the process that goes on in the mind when you tell someone to kill, it's very different from the process of picking up an axe, waiting behind a tree, and cutting someone's head off. Very different processes, right? Which is also why killing a mosquito is very different from chopping someone's head off with an axe. Very different, very different sequence of mental states. But as far as the precept goes, yes. You obviously break the precept if you tell someone to kill. You don't even have to tell them. If you do anything with the intention that a being dies, for this act of speech or action, may this being die or that being die. If that being dies, you have broken the first precept. If they die as a result, even indirectly, of that action. But it's not you did something and someone else died. You have to have the intention that by this act, this being will die. I say this to this person, that will result eventually in that being's death. Then you've broken the first precept. When they die, technically, when they are killed, at that moment you've broken the first precept. But the precepts are clearly, based on this example, they're clearly just a conceptual framework. doesn't actually mean anything to say you've broken the first precept. What's important is the qualities of mind that are evoked in the process, in the mental process. So it would make no sense to say someone who tells someone to kill someone experiences the same consequences as the person who actually did the killing, because the reality of those two mental processes is very different. It's not magic. It's not you die and then there's this tally. You killed this many mosquitoes. You killed this many mice. You killed this many humans. It's not a tally like that. It's how all of that comes together to affect your last moment in this life and builds a narrative for the next life.
Bhante, here is the next question. Can you talk about the process of nibbida, aversion? How does nibbida begin and progress? Is it propelled by sukha, happiness?
Nibbida doesn't mean aversion. Those are two very different words. Nibbida should never be translated as aversion, because it's not. Ni means like out, near like nirvana, right? Near ni as a prefix means when something is removed or absent in this case. But the implication is that it's gone out. It's gone. It's left. And bida comes from the root bind. I'm not sure actually. Which relates to grasping and clinging. So nibbida is, the idea is that your desire to seek out things has been dispelled. So it's translated as dispassion, disenchantment. It's characterized by fatigue, by being tired, but not tired in the sense of falling asleep, just tired of this, tired of it. Not just tired, but tired of samsara, basically. So it feels like one is just sick of it all, tired. No, sick is too much, because sick is aversion. If you're sick of something, you're averse to it. It's not really sick. It's just tired. Bored. It often triggers boredom. It's the perception of things being incessant, unrelenting, uncontrollable. It's just you see the three characteristics enough so that you lose your passion for things. You stop giving certain things preeminence. What's the word? You give them privilege. You stop privileging certain experiences, and you start to really see that everything is just the same. Not yet at the point of true equanimity, but you're starting to see that it's just tiresome. So you're still being triggered, potentially. Person in nibbida might still like or dislike, but they're so sick of it. Well, not sick, they're so tired of it. Not sick of it, tired of it. It's just so much, again and again. Every time this comes up, I like it. Every time this comes up, I dislike it. Again and again and again. That's nibbida, no aversion. Comes from seeing clearly, or it comes in the process of seeing and clearer and clearer. Part of that process is nibbida.
Say, here is the next question. When does an appreciation of material things turn into clinging? I mean, what is the difference between being grateful about what I have and needing material things in order to be happy?
So you're using words, and these words potentially used in a certain way can mask the reality and make it sound innocent. So I can pick apart your words and I can take them in a very analytical sense, but it will lose what's hidden behind your words. And I can show you that there's something hidden behind your words. You can appreciate something, and when you appreciate something, it means you determine its value, and you assess its value, or you recognize its value. Not you recognize it as valuable. It's like a calculation. You say, this is worth this much. When you appreciate something, it means you are clearly, or one way of using this word is, and the essence of it, the reality of it, is you recognize the nature of something. So if something's good, you recognize that. If something is valuable, you recognize that. This is like recognition. But usually what happens is when you recognize something as having a positive value, a significant value, you like it. And well, liking is inevitably the cause of clinging. You can't have liking without clinging. But that's really your answer, because when you say appreciation of material things, you're 90%, 99% chance you're talking about liking. You're not just talking about appreciating. But you're hiding it behind that word appreciation, so it's kind of sneaky of you. I don't mean to attribute maliciousness to you, but it's a common question. People wrestle with this because they're using words, and these words being inaccurate, they make it impossible when using those words to really determine what's happening. So if you pick it apart, you can see there's two things going on. Recognizing something as having a certain value, and then liking or disliking. If you appreciate something as being harmful, disliking, right? But the appreciation isn't the problem. Except when I say that, the use of the word appreciation, we always use it to mean liking. I like it. We don't say that because then that would be admitting that I'm attached to it, or that I'm clinging to it in some way, or somehow dependent on it. Because the point is, if you just purely appreciate something, then it means there's no interest in it whatsoever. You've just analytically said it has this value. Like a person who brings a gem to a gem shop, they appreciate it. They are able to say it has this much value. But they don't appreciate it in the sense that they like it. They look at it, they dismiss it, they give it back to you, you go home. When you say appreciate, you're almost definitely talking about liking, which is a problem. Plain and simple. And then when you talk about being grateful, again, you're hiding something there, because you're being grateful about a thing. That's not how you use the word grateful. That's not how it should be used. I'm grateful I have so much money. To make it very crass, let's be very crass about this and say, I'm grateful I have so much money. That's not what the word grateful means. We say that now, but the reason why we say it is usually because we believe in God, or we believe in the universe. We believe in something that gave it to us. And that's how you use the word grateful. Grateful is to acknowledge that someone did something for you. It has nothing to do with the thing they did for you. It has nothing to do with, I mean, indirectly, I suppose. Someone gave you a lot of money, you're more grateful. But money is so crass. Let's say someone helped you, someone taught you the Dhamma, taught you meditation. You're grateful to them. But it's not grateful for having this thing. It's grateful to the person. It's gratitude towards the person, not towards the thing. Oh, look, I'm so grateful to this money. You're not grateful to the money or the thing that you got. You're grateful towards the person. That's how we use gratitude, and that's how gratitude should be applied. It's applied in the sense that you think, what can I do to repay this person? What can I do to give something to them? That's how gratitude works. It has nothing to do with the thing, except in terms of recognizing how profound or how significant or insignificant is the thing that they did for you or gave to you. When we say we're grateful for something, you're hiding the liking. Again, it's just the liking. I'm grateful for this means you like it. What you're saying, you're not saying, but what you're implying is that you like it. Nothing to do with gratitude, but you like it, and you use the word gratitude to describe that. It's not very accurate. Again, I'm being very critical. I'm using words that sound very critical. I appreciate this is common, this is normal, this is the language that we use. But at the same time, it's important that we break it up like this. So I'm not attacking you. Don't take this as an attack. And I perfectly understand. I'm human as well. We all have been through this. But this is the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha was a vibhajyavadi. He dissected things and corrected this distortion when we use words that hide things and that sort of thing. So be vigilant, because words can distract you from the truth. If you hide behind them, you're not even intentionally, but you say gratitude. Yeah, I'm grateful. How could that be wrong? Yeah, be careful, because you see how you've misused that word to give you cover for your liking. It prevents you from seeing the liking. Liking is inevitably a problem. There's no way around it. It's not like thinking, it's not like appreciating, it's not like gratitude, it's liking. And as soon as it arises, it's karma. It's unethical. You've done something, and it will have consequences. Bad consequences, inevitably. I mean, not necessarily. That's not entirely true. Because it's not sure that it will have consequences. But if it has consequences, they will be negative.
Bhante, here is the next question. As a Buddhist, how do I deal with getting drafted into the military for 2 years?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Well, you just don't kill. That's the biggest one. Just don't kill. Even if that means death, sometimes it means you die. Better to die than to kill. Doesn't mean you can't defend yourself. And it is a Buddhist principle to defend yourself insofar as it's necessary to stop someone from killing you, hurting you. But it has to be, of course, proportional. It can't be kill them so they don't hurt me. I mean, I think there's so many things you can do in the army, in military service that don't involve killing, especially in modern times. So unless you have the unfortunate destiny to be placed on an active battlefield, you can probably do even a lot of good. But the military does good things like blood relief and that sort of thing. Public works. Even just giving people a sense of security and confidence is not necessarily a bad thing. You can be a good influence. You can even be a chaplain. I don't know in 2 years how far you'd get, but you could do chaplaincy stuff. Like get involved with the chaplaincy office and try to ask about teaching meditation to soldiers, mindfulness to soldiers.
Bhante, here is the next question. I'm finding it difficult to note experiences since a lot of effort is spent trying to think of a fitting word for the present moment, which leads to more thinking than mindfulness. Do you have any advice?
Well, you just say thinking, thinking. If you have to think of the word, you're not noting the right thing. Plain and simple. So just not thinking, doubting, confused, unsure. It's probably a lot of doubt involved, and you're not noting the doubt. So, the skill really to recognize what you're actually experiencing. If you're unsure about what you're experiencing, well, you're experiencing uncertainty, which is doubt. So you should just note unsure or doubting. That's what you're really experiencing.
Bhante, this will be the last question for today. I'm finding other than formal meditation, instead of refraining from entertainment or sweet food, I've started a little challenge where I try to note as much as I can, like hearing, seeing, tasting. Is this okay?
Yeah, it's great. You still benefit from moderation and things like entertainment. So let's keep that in mind. But absolutely, any moments of noting are good, beneficial, and to support your progress on the path. Sometimes it's better to note than to deprive yourself, or what's the word, than to purposefully suppress Like in the example of sweet food, rather than avoiding sweet food, you're better off to just note tasting. But you mean you can do it in moderation, so you can say, well, I should eat less sweet food because it's too hard to note otherwise. But you shouldn't give it up completely. It's just there's not really a need to do that. I mean, there are health implications, so for other reasons you might stop eating sweet food, but the best thing is actually just to note tasting, liking, and that sort of thing. That is the most powerful practice you can do. The problem is when you get into things like entertainment, it gets so difficult to actually be mindful. And at the same time, you're cultivating more desire, inevitably, because, well, whereas eating sweet food can be somewhat neutral and just the act of eating, engaging with entertainment is, I mean, unless you're watching a documentary, it's hard to have it be an equanimous activity.
Bante, I apologize. There is a request to ask the one last question in Tier 1, if that's okay.
Mhm.
Okay, here's the last question of Tier 1. I have had a lot of trouble sleeping lately. I often wake up in the middle of the night very anxious, confused, or alert. I sometimes sit in my bed and meditate, and it helps me calm down and sometimes fall back to sleep, but I'm often still disheveled the next day due to lack of sleep. It's hard not to be discouraged, considering how long I've been practicing, apparently imperfectly, and that sleep/rest is supposed to be regulated by the practice. Do you have any advice?
Sleep being regulated by the practice is more of a long-term thing. I don't know how much intensive practice you've done. I mean, real profound effects like that are kind of going to require more than just practicing daily. I mean, I don't know, maybe you're someone who's done intensive practice, but even that being the case, there's physiological factors. There's factors of the brain. You can't say with any accuracy that it's going to be like this or going to be like that. But what you can do is work on the response to the experiences. But when you wake up in the middle of the night, the fact that you're worried, well, that's what you should be focused on. If you can experience it without worry, that should be your goal. Waking up is not a problem, but worry is a big problem. For example, wanting to fall asleep is a problem. Wanting to feel calm is a problem. Clinging to the calm is a problem. Trying to make yourself calm is a problem. So you should note the calm as well. You should note any liking or disliking, wanting to fall asleep, worrying about not falling asleep, that sort of thing. All of those things are the real issue, and they're going to tax the mind. They make you more stressed when you wake up and so on. But you can also be mindful of that when you're, as you say, disheveled. Well, ask yourself, what is the actual reality? Because disheveled isn't real. It's okay, but it's not quite precise. You can be more precise than that and figure out what you're actually experiencing. And because when you say, I'm disheveled in the morning, that's the word you used, right? Yeah, disheveled. That is a quality of you. And you is a thing that lasts throughout the day. So as a result, how do you fight that? What do you do to fix that? the point is you don't, because you is not real. It's just an idea that you have, and being disheveled as a quality of that you that doesn't exist is also not real. Because they're not real, they don't change. They continue to persist in your mind, and every time something arises that you associate with that state of being, of you being disheveled, you reinforce that. You say, oh, I'm still disheveled, for example. The truth is just these experiences keep coming up. If you can pinpoint what you're at, what is actually happening, you'll lose the sense that you're disheveled. You'll stop being discouraged by that, being upset by that, and because all of those things make you more tired and so on, more stressed. So try and approach the actual experiences. Again, this takes practice. I don't know if you've done intensive practice. It might be something to look into. But even if you have, it's sometimes you just miss things and you find it, you have difficulty pinpointing and recognizing what you're actually experiencing. So try to work on that. Don't just say you're disheveled. Pinpoint what's actually the experience, because it'll come and go. And then you realize, oh, it's not actually a problem, because it's just these things that keep happening.
Thank you, Bhante. That will conclude our session for today.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you to those who organized this Dhamma group and broadcasted it and volunteered to allow it to function. Thank you to everyone who was involved with the reading and with the conversation, discussion, asking questions, answering questions, discussing things. Thank you to all the YouTube people who joined and were interested and asked questions. Everyone who's here with an appreciative and sincere mind to study the Buddha's teaching, to learn more about the nature of reality, and to cultivate wholesome qualities, to free ourselves from unwholesome qualities, and to purify our minds. Today is the Vesak celebration here in our monastery. Vesak comes from the Sanskrit is Vesaka, I guess. Pali is Visakha. So in Thailand, we call it Visakha. Visakha is a month, and it was supposed to be last month, but it's supposed to be 28 days ago. But the government of Sri Lanka decided it would be today. And in fact, today is not the official full moon. That's tomorrow. But regardless, worth announcing and letting be known that this is the celebration of the birth of the Buddha, the enlightenment of the Buddha, and the Buddha's passing away, which are monumentous events for all of us, without which we would not have, without the Buddha, we would not have this. Without the birth of the Bodhisattva, without the birth of the Buddha and as enlightenment, without the turning of the wheel of the Dhamma. So much appreciation for that, and our homage and respect and reverence to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. We appreciate and revere the three treasures, jewels of the Buddhist religion. Through the power of those three jewels and three treasures, the power of all the goodness that everyone has performed on this occasion, all of the good everyone has done in this life and past lives, may all of that goodness have the power to protect us, protect you all, protect everyone from suffering, from pain, from fear, from danger, from sickness, from calamity, from enmity. May it support you in life, living a long life, health and happiness and strength to face whatever challenges come your way. May you all go on to happy places. Be born in a place, wherever you're born, be born in a place where you're able to continue to practice and cultivate good qualities, cultivate goodness and purification and clarity of mind. And through the strength and power of your mind, strength and power of your mental faculties, and the good qualities that you develop in the practice of in the following of the Buddha's teaching and the Buddha's path. May everyone find peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering of the path, fruition, and nibbana. Sadhu.
Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu,
sadhu.
sadhu, sadhu.